Located one block from two institutions acclaimed internationally for their excellence in pedagogy, Howard University and Benjamin Banneker High School. Sankofa offers patrons access to great literature and great films under the same roof, striving to enhance the corridor's cultural and educational offerings. We named the bookstore Sankofa because, as you may know, because we live in D.C., this is an adinkra symbol of a bird that's looking back as she moves forward. She looks at the past to make sure she knows where she's headed. We produced a film with the same title that garnered a level of interest in this Black reality, in the reality of Black people around the world, culturally and historically. And we wanted that name to be associated with our store, hence the title Sankofa Your Books. The movies that we make tend to look back at our past. As a matter of fact, I made a film called Brick by Brick that focuses on displacement in Washington, D.C. Believe it or not, that film was made in the late 70s. At that time, we were experiencing a horrific wave of displacement that was raging through D.C., which turns out to have been a mere dress rehearsal for what's going on. It's ironic that 30 years later, I sit before you in the midst of a gentrification explosion, imploring you to do more to protect me from the devastations of that same gentrification. 20 years of service to our community, to our city, and now that very city is threatening our stability with huge and unfair property tax. The gentrification of Washington, D.C. has increased our tax burden to over $30,000 in 2019. This level of taxes represents a 25% increase over the last 10 years. Should I repeat that? This $30,000 for 2019 represents an increase of 25% over the last 10 years. I wish that I could say that our revenue has increased by more than 25%, maybe 30, 40, 50, 200%. Our intentions to grow, our possibilities to grow have increased, but that very attempt to grow is undermined with every additional tax increase. The Chief Finance Officer has seen fit to not recommend the tax relief proposed by Councilmember Nadeau, and I beg to differ with his findings. At our current level of growth, our taxes will outpace our revenue by the year 2020. Yes, Mr. McDuffie and committee, we have managed to stay in the black. We are current with all of our taxes, but it has been done with extreme sacrifice to our operations. Art and creativity cannot flourish in a market environment. They struggle to do well. We could be 100 times as effective as we are now in inspiring young people and connecting generations to each other and bringing great literature to new minds, had we not had to pay such a heavy burden all these years, and one that is getting heavier and heavier. We operate primarily as a service organization dedicated to the personal growth of artists, patrons, and authors, and communities. I implore you now to take a bold stand and protect Black businesses like Sankofa from the raging devastations of gentrification. Take a stand, say no to the loss of hundreds of more small businesses and thousands of residents is not a mark of progress. It's a mark of regression into darkness, camouflaged by flashy buildings and dogs on leashes.
Good teacher.
I implore you to take a stand that protects the businesses on whose backs DC was built and whose loyalty made DC city government possible.
And thank you for your testimony. Applause. If I weren't here, I'd be applauding too. However, we got a lot of folks who time to testify. We do that after every testimony. We'll be here a very long time. So, again, thank you for your testimony. I want to note before we move on to this packet that we've been joined by report one. Councilmember Brianna Nadeau, who's not a member of the committee, but who is the member who actually introduced this legislation and represents the war in which Sankofa is located. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie, Councilmember Nadeau, and your staffs, as well as staff from Councilmember Jay's office. I thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony, and I should mention that I don't have the hard copies with me, but I'll be sure to send those to the council. To provide testimony regarding B230075, which exempts 2714 Georgia Avenue Northwest from taxation to provide tax relief. I'm providing testimony in my role as the Lower Georgia Avenue Main Street Neighborhood Director managed by local nonprofit District Bridges. The small business operating at this address is located along the Lower Georgia Avenue Commercial Corridor. Although the registered name of this business is My Fadu Films, those of us living, working, studying, and visiting this neighborhood know it as Sankofa Video Bookstore and Cafe. In light of the earlier agenda items that incentivize establishing valued commercial establishments, this legislation would make a contribution to actually holding on to exactly the kind of business that DC officials as well as residents hope to have in their own neighborhoods. My testimony today will focus on two themes: Sankofa's role and contribution to the community, and commercial displacement pressures facing small businesses on Georgia Avenue, similar to those facing other rapidly gentrifying DC neighborhoods. With regard to Sankofa's community contribution, it is important to remember that Sankofa is not only a treasured independent book and film retailer, but also a vital asset in preserving DC's distinctive culture and identity. For more than 20 years, Sankofa has provided a multi-generational, neighborhood-based home for intellectual discourse and community building. Sankofa is located directly across Georgia Avenue from the distinguished academic and cultural institution of Howard University. As you know, Howard is an internationally recognized historically Black university. It has been developing African and African American leaders and professionals for over 150 years. Sankofa's close proximity to Howard creates unique convening opportunities for faculty, students, staff, and visitors from around the world, along with community members and residents across the DC metropolitan area. Howard alum returned to Sankofa as a place that was an integral part of their intellectual as well as social development. Sankofa is often the first stop on book tours of authors writing about important issues of the day. Former cultural events as well as informal discussions delve into timely and timeless issues with a particular focus on experiences, voices, writings, and films of and about people of African descent. These practically daily events are open to all members of the community. Sankofa's absence would ripple not only across the Georgia Avenue neighborhoods and residents, but across generations that remember Sankofa as being part of their intellectual and social development. Sankofa also makes an important economic contribution through its local employment and local maker retail space. Along with its owners, 90% of its staff are DC residents. Howard students make up at least half of its sales clerk staff. Additionally, Sankofa has long served as a venue for local artists, entrepreneurs, and makers to thrive. The business's founding owners continue to provide learning experience and material support for young filmmakers finding their own artistic voice, to support commemorating the past and exploring what lies ahead. They partnered with a local business owner to open a Sankofa Cafe on site, which offers healthy food options and a welcoming environment for diners and readers alike. A large number of community artists and authors sell their DC-made products and materials through Sankofa. 95% of Sankofa's jewelry and 100% of their t-shirts, soaps, and shea butters are produced by local artisans. Local authors are able to sell their books, including 25% of the offered children's books. These authors rely on Sankofa to launch their new works and are able to tap into Sankofa's email list of over 10,000 contacts. In addition to considerations of community benefit, it's also important to understand the larger context in which Sankofa struggles to operate. Georgia Avenue is undergoing rapid demographic and economic changes similar to other gentrifying commercial corridors in Washington, D.C. I'm especially appreciative that DC council members recognize that involuntary displacement is facing not only DC residents, but also small businesses that both hire and serve local residents and neighbors. News coverage delves into the crisis of retailers across the country, and DC has not escaped these national trends. Facing challenges from internet commerce and changing consumer preferences, small businesses are especially vulnerable. These small businesses do not have the economies of scale to take advantage of bulk purchasing. They do not have national reach or large margins to absorb regional variation in fixed costs. In DC, the most vulnerable of these businesses are those that have been in our neighborhoods the longest, that served our communities in times of economic hardship, but are now finding their percent increase in revenues unable to keep pace with percent increases in property-related costs. Many of the protection, I'm over my limit. I think actually Director Whitfield raised the major issue of how property is valued, and that is what's increasing the property tax burden. So it's not the percent of the property tax, it's the valuation process that talks about best use, which is about air rights, it's about international real estate markets, and it's not about what those businesses that are in place now actually have the ability to earn. So I thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony and be able to answer questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Huggins-Axel.
Good morning, Councilmember McDuffie and Councilmember Nadeau and your staff. My name is Eureka Huggins-Axel. I've been a resident of the District of Columbia for over 30 years. I am testifying today on behalf as a representative of the African Diaspora Ancestral Commemoration Institute, ADASI, for which I am a co-founder and director of international affairs. ADASI is a 27-year-old nonprofit education, cultural, and spiritual international community organization based in Washington, D.C. And for the past 25 years, ADASI has worked very closely with owners of Sankofa Books and Videos to host numerous programs and activities that has featured local and world-renowned scholars, artists, and activists. These scholars represent our focus on the African diaspora, and they include, among many others, Dr. Sheila Walker, who is the foremost expert on Afro-Latino culture, Dr. Lisa Aubrey, an author, scholar, and activist. They continuously seek ADASI's support to present their work at Sankofa. We have also presented Colonel Frank Underwood, retired United States Army Colonel, an NGO leader and father of actor Blair Underwood, who presented his work on the 1619 Project and talked about his linkages, his ancestral linkage to Cameroon, for the first time in a Washington, D.C. community that was at Sankofa. And our community elder, we have presented Nana Farika Burnham, an author, activist, and U.S. representative for the world-renowned Jamaica Maroons community, who has brought them as members to the Smithsonian and to Sankofa to present their culture. These programs, she has made Sankofa a home for the Maroons community. Sankofa is considered by experts as a center for scholarship for the African diaspora. It serves as a place for them to present their work. If they want to be taken seriously, it's a validation for them. It is an international center, a meeting place where American society, the global African community, and the world converge with other cultures of the diaspora. It is a place where people from everywhere can come and feel free to explore, to debate, and to discuss some of the most critical, historical, and contemporary issues that impact our community, our local and international communities. And they also provide solutions. And for this reason, among others, Sankofa serves as a symbol of what a true democracy is about. Heidi Garima and his wife, Shirikiana, never hesitate to open their space to the community. It is a place where nonprofit education and cultural organizations can host its events free or at an affordable rate. You may not notice, but Washington, D.C. is very unfriendly and unaffordable to most nonprofits who struggle to find a space to host their programs and activities that benefit our community. For Haile and Shirikiana, it's never a question of what can you afford, it's always when or how soon can you present your work and how will it benefit our community, period. I have personally accompanied several up-and-coming leaders, world leaders to Sankofa that have included Francisco Tabar an Afro-Venezuelan descendant rights activist who was a participant in the U.S. Department of State International Visitor Leadership Program. This is one of the most prestigious programs of the U.S. Department that brings up-and-coming leaders for short-term exchanges to meet with Americans and to exchange ideas and cultures. Heidi has met with many of them to talk about his work and exchange ideas. And for Francisco, for him, this space was sacred, unlike his home country right now, which is at this current time. Others who have visited Sankofa to meet with Adasi included Edmund McCullough, a UNESCO World Heritage expert, and in the past 2 years, the Pan-African Diaspora Women's Association, a special initiative of the African Union's representational mission to the United States. Sankofa now is a regular meeting place for Padua. In another week, on June 19th, Adasi will be one of 7 organizations across the United States working in partnership with the 400 Years of African American History Commission that was appointed by Congress. We will present its signature event at Sankofa entitled Let's Talk, an International Day of Drumming and Healing. What an honor for us and for our community and for this city. The commissioners include Lonnie Bunch, among others. In closing, we in Adasi believe very strongly that the importance that this nation and the city places on the Washington Monument, an African symbol, mind you, as a national treasure should no doubt be the same importance that the city places on Sankofa as a global symbol for international scholars, cultural leaders, artists, activists, students in our community. Not only should the District of Columbia pass the tax abatement bill for Sankofa, our city should really be thinking about how it will preserve and support Sankofa's further development and sustainability as an institution and one of the most valued treasures in our local community with far-reaching global footprints and impact. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan.
Good morning, Chairman Duffy and Councilmember Nadeau. I'm here in my capacity as an individual. I'm also specifically here to register my support for the tax abatement proposal that's in front of you. I currently work at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where I teach also. And I also serve as chair of the Durham, North Carolina Historic Preservation Commission. However, today I come to you as a former 16-year resident of the district who both graduated from and taught at Howard University, who work at the Mayor's Summer Youth Employment Program with the DC Commission on the Arts. I also work as an ink pen salesman at Woodruff Loathworth Tax. But during this time, I was an active member of a number of community organizations and in the process fell in love with this city. Not the federal city that so many outside of the city recognize, but instead the residential city where the day-to-day lives of people are best seen and best appreciated in places like Sankofa. I've lived and worked in a number of places around the country, and despite my history with those places, no matter where I happen to be living and working, I still travel back to DC on an average of 3 times each month to visit friends and former students and co-workers. More importantly, and without fail, Sankofa is always my first stop. That stop is intentional, and I admit to the guilty pleasure I enjoy when I visit the small but immeasurably significant oasis Sankofa has created right there on Georgia Avenue Northwest. When I was still a resident here in the district, I lived for most of that time at 2719 Georgia Avenue Northwest, across from what is now Sankofa. During this period, I had the pleasure of serving as a City Light Scholar for the Humanities Council and also as a project director for the Urban Odyssey of Washington, D.C., Many Voices on a Common Ground project. This project sought to recover the voices of the communities that built this city. From that experience, I've never lost sight of the importance of providing adequate support for the smaller institutions that help to define the character of neighborhoods and for the neighborhoods of this city, and as well, the need to protect them, particularly when they are in danger. Our present circumstances with Sankofa is by far one of the best examples of this dynamic, and indeed marks an urgent and prescient moment for the council. As new dynamics continue to refine, in some cases distort, the soul and substance of our historically significant neighborhoods, it is certainly reasonable for us to reject the notion that these changes are either all desirable or inevitable. We can advance decisions that are intentional, in prioritizing the survival of Black community institutions that have been central to the growth and well-being of their neighborhoods and to the city at large. That position is neither anti-progressive nor restrictive. It is, however, fully appreciative of what we know about Sankofa and what's to be done for their neighborhood and the city. And in the same way that it's quite urgent that we support Sankofa, it's also urgent that I stop because of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. I actually was trying to find on your testimony where you were. Where'd you leave off with your testimony?
Half of it. Second half on the second page. On the second.
So I'm gonna give you a little time of
All
my
right.
question. We're gonna do a 7-minute round. I'm gonna give you about another 60 seconds or so,
All right.
just to summarize.
All right, I'll show you what Howard taught me about reading fast. As I see the human physical landscape of the city changing, I also see the growing challenge of determining what most deserves to be held on to and preserved, not simply as physical reminders of what used to occupy those spaces, but what also deserves to be nurtured, protected, and supported because of what they do as well as for who they are. I will tell you what I know. What I've seen award-winning artists, notable political figures, enterprising young scholars and community educators, folks from Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, and Southeast DC sit down next to each other, rub elbows, debate the politics of the world, and solve those problems of the world effectively over a sandwich and a cup of coffee. At Sankofa, award-winning writers, noted playwrights and directors, and visionary social and political leaders converse with community residents, students, fellow notables, and most importantly, children. Sankofa deserves the support of the city because it has become a local, regional, national, and international resource whose presence and impact far surpasses its size. Sankofa consistently outperforms larger and more resourced institutions when it comes to direct programming, support for artists, and investment in local people. It is an anchor and an indicator of what this city and what this council should value in our community. I urge you to support and then move forward to approve this measure in the interest of the citizens of the city and to benefit those current and future residents who will see DC and Sankofa as home. Thank you.
Thank you, and I won't yield as much time to everybody, but I had the benefit of A, being a fellow Bison, B, also having read ahead and saw that part of it, took the penultimate paragraph where you talk about Sankofa deserves the support of the city because it is becoming local, regional, national, international resources, presence, fully functioning community resources, impact, cross classes, and size. I quoted, Sankofa consistently outperforms larger, more resource institutions, some of which have gotten similar benefits over the years from this government. And not to disparage any larger corporation, but I think we shouldn't lose sight of the smaller ones that often are the institutions that help build people within our communities and maintain the sort of cultural and value that I think makes the District of Columbia the place that it is. Quite frankly, a place that people from all over the world choose to come, not just the national monuments and the things down at the mall, but things along Georgia Avenue with resources like Sankofa. So I wanted to repeat on that portion of your testimony. You went on to say that Sankofa, you said that when it comes to direct programming, support for artists, and investment in local people, it is an anchor and an indicator of what this city and what this council values in our community. And I wholeheartedly agree. I appreciate the testimony from each of you. Ms. Piper, as somebody who works closely, works at the Georgia Avenue Main Street, and I work closely with you all in the organization. We talk frequently in this environment when you come to testify, but also when I'm taking tours along historic Georgia Avenue that we are losing far too many businesses. And although the CFO has decided and concluded that, and I'm quoting, the 10-year real property tax abatement proposed by Bill 22-75 is not necessary for Michael Blue Films and Sankofa Video and Books to meet its financial needs. This is their conclusion. And I appreciate that conclusion. The CFO is going with the CFO's prerogative to do, and this, you know, it's not a slight to the CFO. I think it's a very important function, obviously, that we have that sort of analysis. On the other hand, I'm taking the quote from Mr. Jordan again. We can't advance decisions that are intentional in prioritizing survival of Black community institutions that have been central to the growth and well-being of their neighborhoods and to the city at large. That, to me, is one of the reasons why when the CFO makes those types of decisions, it is not dispositive as to whether or not we have to proceed to oppose something like this. This council can still decide that this is a worthy cause, a worthy bill, a worthy effort, and support Sankofa in this way, even though the CFO has decided that the past three, and I'm quoting again from the CFO's analysis, the past 3 years of unaudited profit and loss statements show MFI is able to make real property tax abatements and still achieve positive net cash income in each year. And I didn't even said that you all are managing to stay in the black. The question that I have is for how long? Right? I mean, as the cost of living in this city, the cost of property and the assessments continue to rise, how long are you going to be able to stay in the black in this environment and continue to operate in the way that you have for so many years?
As I stated in my testimony, we're being threatened as of 2020. Our ability to stay in the black is going to be threatened as of 2020. 2019, $30,000 is being paid. The last month in the fiscal year for the city is September. Our new our new tax burden will start in September, when we're going to be responsible for paying $33,000 for 2020.
Wow.
So I hope that the calls and urges from people being heard there are heard if there's a passing of this bill, because there is an urgency at hand here. We are not enough in the black to say that 2020 is not going to be a threatened year. We do not owe taxes. I do want the community to know that we do not owe taxes. We are not calling for donations. We have paid our taxes. I spend, I know how many hours a week down at OTR showing them their own records demonstrating that we paid our taxes. But we want to stay in that kind of position, and we have more work to do. We have the largest children's books collection for about people of color, children of color in the area, DMV. People come from out of town just to buy children's books. And that's contributing to a tax base. That's sales. Isn't that money going to the city? They come, they have to stay here overnight. Isn't that contributing to DC's economy there? So then do we have to turn around and pay that money to the city and then not be able to recycle it into the sustenance and development of Sankofa? We have a lot more to do. We've just started in terms of trying to galvanize the creativity of the community we serve. Development means taking that community and developing that community. We're doing that at Sankofa. We just want the city to not undermine our efforts.
I appreciate that, and I want to take a moment also to quote Ms. Huggins' action in her testimony, because I think it speaks to something that I find in my capacity as chair of the Committee on Business and Economic Development to be a much broader issue. But you mentioned in your testimony, and I'm quoting, not only should the District of Columbia pass the tax abatement bill for Sankofa, our city should also be thinking about how it will preserve and support Sankofa's further development and sustainability as an institution and one of the most valuable treasures in our local community with far-reaching global footprint. And I do appreciate this, Sniper, and I know Councilman Nadeau will appreciate this because we talked about it a lot. This request is something that I'm going to go on the record right now and say I support. And I'm hopeful that we'll have enough members of the council to both pass it out of this committee and pass it for council. However, I think it is an example of what is a broader problem, right? We talked about this. I talked about this to a number of my colleagues in the council. I know Councilman Nadeau is legislating in this area in other ways. I know that I've been working really hard as chair of this committee to think about a broader solution, because I think this is a broader problem. What you're experiencing that Sankofa is being experienced by businesses along Georgia Avenue and other major corridors in the District of Columbia. Rhode Island Avenue, Capitol Street, Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. Even parts of the city that perhaps some don't think it's a challenge, you know, Connecticut Avenue, Wisconsin Avenue. I mean, this has happened, 8th Street, name your corridor, because of the prosperity that the city is experiencing. So I think we need a broader, more sustainable solution because of the far-reaching impact that the rising cost of these assessments in the real estate district is having on small businesses. Both when the businesses are by tenants who don't own the buildings, and even when the businesses are owned, our owner run businesses, it's still a challenging problem. So to the extent there are people out here who work in this field and have broader solutions, we want to hear from you. Because, you know, when you look at the numbers, when you look at the information provided to the CFO, they're going to come back and say, hey, you know, they can pay their taxes. But again, you know, is that the heart of the issue? I don't think that's the heart of the issue that we have to grapple with as elected officials, and that you will have to grapple with as business owners, and quite frankly, that residents that live in this community who really appreciate what Sankofa means, not only to Georgia Avenue, but to the district, to the world. I mean, you've got folks who are coming from all across the world to patronize this business and to get that Sankofa experience. And we've got to think about ways to preserve that and preserve other businesses that also help to create that culture that makes DC a place that I've always known and continue to love. So I appreciate that. I'm going to turn at this point to my colleague, Councilmember Randy Bell, who I mentioned earlier, represents Ward 1, where Sankofa is located, but also introduced this bill and has been working really closely with me and my other colleagues on issues around racial equity, social justice, and economic improvement, because we know how important that is to the future of this component. So Councilmember Bell, I appreciate you being there. I appreciate you introducing that legislation.
Thank you, Chairman, and I also appreciate you and all the work that you're doing. You know, as the author of Racial Equity Issues Results, I think you clearly get this issue, right? Is we can look at a TAFA and we can see what it says in black and white, but that doesn't speak to all of the other impacts that a business has on the community. It doesn't speak to the race equity issue that we see. And it certainly doesn't speak to the story of Sankofa, so I want to thank you for convening this hearing. I first came to know Sankofa as a commissioner on ANC 1B, but I first met with its owner once I became council member. And during that meeting, Mr. Rima reminded me of the important role that Sankofa Video Books and Cafe on Lower Georgia Avenue in Ward 1 has played in our community. As evidenced by this room, which not everybody can see on TV, but it is packed full of supporters. Sankofa has become a place for people of all ages and backgrounds to gather, relax, read, question, contemplate, produce, join me for Brianna on your block from time to time. And I know Councilmember McDuffie spent some time there too when he was an undergraduate. So as we all now know, the word Sankofa means going back to our past in order to go forward. This name's fitting in that there are few places experiencing more development and change than Lower Georgia Avenue. And I believe it's critical that we continue to support our minority and local-owned businesses so as to preserve and lift the spirit of our neighborhoods as new residents and amenities arrive. On Georgia Avenue, we're doing that in a number of ways. As council member, I created a new clean team on Main Street, represented here by District Bridges. I expanded our Great Streets program for Georgia Avenue, and we've begun our work on the equitable development plan for Lower Georgia Avenue that I'm very excited about. And the whole point of that is to ensure that longtime businesses and residents get to benefit from the prosperity that is just now coming to the corridor in the same way that they've had to experience the lack of prosperity for all of these years. But none of these things will happen overnight, and what Sankofa needs is help now. So today we're hearing from Mr. Rima and all the many patrons of Sankofa speaking about the importance of this local establishment to the community that has grown up around it. We'll hear about all the business has done, and I hope we'll also hear about all that it could do, it could be without this tax burden. Because a tax abatement should never just be about the past. exist. Instead, it should be rooted in a vision for future growth and opportunity. Ms. Jarima and her husband are true visionaries in our community, and I get excited whenever I think about the type of programming and cultural enrichment that they could provide if given just a little more wiggle room to grow financially. And Sankofa has a track record of hiring locally. This abatement is contingent on their continued commitment to hiring and training district residents and Ward 1 residents, which, by the way, when we suggested Sankofa's ownership did not even bat an eyelid. They were fully on board with that because they know that providing local jobs is part of their legacy and part of what they've always done. So actually, with that, I do have a few questions. And while I thank all of you for your testimony, I'm going to focus in on our business owner over here. I hope you won't mind with the limited time that we have. Mr. Rima, how many employees do you currently have?
We have about, it varies depending on student schedules.
Sure.
And this is the summer, so we have about 5 part-time employees.
Okay. And what percentage of them are district residents?
There's only one that's not. That's just because he can't afford to live.
Touche. Can you tell us about any of the staffing challenges that you've had over the years?
Well, again, because we're across from Howard University, we do have a commitment to students. Our challenges are not necessarily staffing.
Okay.
We have, people that work at Sankofa, and there's some here that are today who want to testify. They're either current or former employees. That we rely on their commitment to the material that we sell, to the idea of Sankofa. And usually because they're young, they're very committed to the idea because it's such a great workplace.
Right.
So staffing is not at the top of our problem.
Okay, great. Councilmember McDuffie talked a bit about the tax abatement financial analysis, and you mentioned that your tax bill becomes a problem as soon as this fall, as soon as 2020. Can you give us any specifics about the type of prudent financial decisions or cutbacks you've had to make to ensure that your business remains solvent?
Well, there are some things that we need to do in the way of expanding, maintenance and expansion. We would like to have a building, for example, that accommodates disabilities, different kinds of abilities. We would like to have a building that has an HVAC that is comfortable in every season. And our patrons are so wonderful, they sweat, don't complain. We would like to make sure that we have an infrastructure that is so strong that we can bring in more authors that are local, that require a lot more attention than nationally known authors. We'd like to have someone in place that deals just with local authors, local filmmakers, people that can be walked through the process, invoicing to everything else. So that would increase.
That's great. So local talent development does require a lot more handholding, a lot more investment. You're not dealing with somebody's this every day. That's critical, really, when we think about growing our artist community.
It's very critical because now with independent publishing, this is something important to keep in mind with the challenges of competing with big box stores. We lived through that, we made it. The challenges of online sales with Amazon, that's always a challenge.
Yes.
But now here we are with the increased ability of anybody to write a book. So you can find that in the midst of all that competition, simple people are able to save their life and tell it in a book. Their photographs, their films, whatever it is, they can tell that story and share it. So you can see people who've gone through something, they can come into Sankofa. Maybe they're a returning citizen. They can come to Sankofa, share their book that they've independently produced, get feedback, and grow as a writer. And that takes, they may not know how to write an invoice because they haven't done it, so we provide invoice templates. Making sure that we get those, all that kind of stuff is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And making sure their payments are on time, because maybe we have 2 copies of their books, and we sell one in 2 months. So you have to track all that, make sure that they don't feel that they've been, left out or something. But it takes a lot of work, but we take it as our responsibility because the payoff is so great.
Sure.
And because of that, people can launch themselves at Sankofa. Even Ta-Nehisi's first book was launched at Sankofa. Ta-Nehisi Books.
See you?
His father's here. He's, Paul Coates is hopefully going to be able to testify among a number of other people that are here today. And of course, he has his own publishing company that's older, way older than Sankofa.
Well, now we don't need to say how old. That's not very nice.
Well, I said his and his legacy is a very strong legacy. that we're honored to be part of.
Absolutely. My office family is a part of that legacy as well, so, yeah.
So we provide that kind of service. We want to be a home to people who started out and say, okay, now I've got my 3rd book and I can't wait to come back to the DC community to share it because that's home. And in order, we can do a better job of that. I can do a better job, for example, of hosting larger events as well. That providing a place where DC community wouldn't be able to see those people, for example. So if I have a better staff in place that can make those arrangements to host those larger events off-site, and then, as the store continues. We'd like to make better partnerships, for example, with schools. Right now, we have a partnership with Roots, the Community Learning Center. We get interns from Parkmont School. We've got interns from Howard University, of course, interns from Banneker. This is the way that we can train students as well, and young people as well, and create a nurturing environment for our future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Just before we go out, I believe you may have mentioned this earlier. I know my staff and I were talking about it. Just the CFO is required by the law to do the tax abatement financial analysis. They can look at the information that's provided, and they provide their feedback, and it's very provided the feedback. Is there anything though that you want to say before we go on to the next panel decision with respect to the tax abatement financial analysis? Any issues you have with it?
I think it's fundamentally flawed. The amount that has been calculated for 10 years is 400,000 something. This is a lot of work to say $400,000. That's half of the report.
Okay.
It shows that by the year, do you have a copy of me?
I do.
10 years from the year 2029, the amount of taxes that we will have paid if we don't receive the abatement would be 460, I think you have it there.
I think it says $415,346.
So I think that the rate of the value of those properties is going up faster than I know that there has to be a calculus used to make those assumptions about property values. But since it's gone up so quickly in the last few years, I just anecdotally expect that it's going to go much faster than that. If we have been charged 25% higher taxes in the last 10 years, and the rate of our growth has been I'm sorry, those figures in front of me, we're not going to be able to be around to do this.
I'd ask my staff just to look back and give me a sense of what the taxes have been over the last several years. And I think I know, like for fiscal year 2020, it's $33,022. And I think in 2018, it was $27,826. In 2011, for example, it was $23,457. So it's gone up. a significant amount, typically for a small business. I think it's worth noting that, and I do want to say I appreciate your testimony, and thank you for your testimony. We move on next to the next panel of witnesses. Kirby Carr. Dr. Carr. Kumar Hutchins. Paul Coates. Press. Lydia Curtis. VP Education of Safari Inc. is here. Great. And good afternoon to each of you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you all coming out and talking to us about our college. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Committee Chairman McDuffie, Chairperson Doe, Council members, fellow testifiers, assembled observers. My name is Greg Carr. For the last 19 years, I've been a member of the faculty at Howard University. Neighbor and for many of our faculty, co-career for the partner, just in co For the last quarter century, I've been a devoted student, follower, and supporter of the creative and institution building work of Highly and Street Agreement, as well as one of millions of their beneficiaries of their landmark filmmaking achievements. I'm here today to testify to the indispensability of Sankofa video books and cafes to the sharp neighborhood, that Africana institution building, creative culture, and education in Washington, the United States, and in the world, and to the threat that this proposed tax increase represents to Sankofa and other Black institutions in Washington, D.C. This council can and must turn toward preserving and nurturing the ground in which Sankofa and its sister institutions across the district have taken root. As a graduate student in Africana Studies at Ohio State and Temple Universities, I followed the work of the Greens. When Sankofa, their best-known film, debuted in 1993, I was fortunate enough to meet Professor Holly Green after a screening at the Indianapolis Black Expo. At that time, a chance to sit with Holly Green was a singular honor. I had no idea that I would one day join him on the faculty at Howard, where he has trained generations of filmmakers, including Ernest Dickinson and Bradford Young. In one of our many partnerships with Sankofa, we hosted the DC premiere of Shrikiana Garima's documentary, Footprints of Pan-Africanism, a groundbreaking documentary companion to Sankofa in many ways last March in Crampton Auditorium. Between these bookend events, the Garimas opened Sankofa Video Books and Cafe in 1998. They inherited the responsibility of anchoring a legendary stretch of Georgia Avenue that we knew as the Nile Valley and other places in the country during the golden age of quote hip-hop Afrocentricity, end quote, for its Black-owned businesses, including several bookstores of central importance across Black America. 21 years later, Sankofa is the last bookstore in the stretch that once held stores from Pyramid Bookstore to Children of the Sun and employed Howard students such as the young Chadwick Boseman. Our Howard students, many of whom are employed at Sankofa or have been employed at Sankofa, meet and interact with the DC community at Sankofa, making it their gateway interaction with the city. Any day of the week, artists from the aforementioned Brad Young, Kamasi Washington, Will Packer, Ava DuVernay, Jason Moran, or Nick Cannon might be found touching base at Sankofa. Anyone during the 2017 presidential inauguration, Solange Knowles brought books for anyone who joined her for an impromptu colloquy at Sankofa. Word spread like wildfire on social media, and the event has entered the national lexicon as a touchstone of today's quote woke renaissance. Ms. Knowles did not select Sankofa randomly. It has a local, national, regional, and international reputation as the intellectual and cultural heart of the Shaw Howard community. Writer Carlos Moore, the country's 3 oldest and largest Black book publishers, Heike Mabuti, Paul Coates, who's sitting here today, and Kazalun Chikoli, Black American senior historian Gerald Horn, and many, many others have held book signings and discussions there on a weekly basis. Our department has joined many others at Howard and other universities to co-host countless joint events with Sankofa, from screenings of Afro-Brazilian cinema by resident Fulbright artists to screenings and discussions of films like I Am Not Your Negro by the Academy Award-winning filmmaker Raoul Peck. We often prefer Sankofa to campus because it makes real the history and theory we explore in our curriculum. As a professor who teaches an average of over 1,000 students per year, I direct my students to purchase course texts and related materials from Sankofa, in major part to drive them into a space where they learn how they relate to the living traditions of our ancestors at their own pace. Sankofa has hired many of my students. One of the many was Michaela Spurlock, a May 2019 Howard graduate in African American Studies who is a descendant of the legendary Spurlock family of photographers in D.C. She was raised in Memphis, and Sankofa became a classroom that was in many ways more important to her development than the university she came to town to attend. When Howard experienced building failures in January 2018, faculty who lost their offices and several buildings began meeting their students at Sankofa. The staff embraced the Howard community even more closely, strengthening long and deep connections between the university and the community. Local high and middle school students from nearby Banneker, Dunbar, and Friendship have come to the store with their teachers, some of them returning now that they have found a place where living history becomes relevant in their own lives. As new residents jog, walk their dogs, and/or push their baby strollers up and down George Avenue, and to our chagrin, through some spaces they have not yet learned the meaning of to DC and the world, our neighborhood is changing. Change is inevitable. Changing of character is not. As a DC transplant who knew of and made pilgrimage to Sankofa, Howard, Florida Avenue Grill, Blue Nile, Everlasting Life, and other touchstone Black institutions well before I knew anything else about the city, I can safely say that Sankofa is a pillar in DC development, far beyond its borders. People come and go, institutions endure. This tax abatement for Sankofa forestalls an act of state-born cultural institution genocide. Today I use my one voice and the generation of faculty and students I represent to support it, not only in this committee session, but nationally and internationally. Thank you for your time. We're all certain we'll make the right decision.
Good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie, Councilmember Nadeau. My name is Emar Hutchins, and I come to you today in my individual capacity and as the owner of Florida Avenue Grill. It's my honor to speak on behalf of Sankofa's proposed bill for property tax exemption. As you probably know, Florida Avenue Grill is today the oldest continually operating Black-owned restaurant in the country. 75 years old this year. When I think about the issue before us today, I'm taking back to our 70th anniversary when the late Mayor Barry spoke, and it was probably one of his last public appearances. He died right after that. And what he said was that the only thing he regretted was that when he was working to bring back U Street, he didn't do anything to help protect the 31 Black businesses that were there. And I didn't know there were 31 before, but I do know that only 4 survived on the pre-segregation days. Those are the Chili Bowl, Industrial Bank, Reed's Floors, and the Grill. And so he was really seemed sad about this. And the reason I bring it up today is to put into context the moment that we're living right now. Sometimes it's easier when looking in the rearview mirror to see, but sometimes when it's happening right now, we can't see it at the time. So just to be clear, what's happening is that the small businesses, especially long-standing Black businesses that make up a critical part of the fabric of DC, they're disappearing every day. And the way they go out, it's not with a bang, it's usually with a whimper, quietly, right? So with them, we lose not only the jobs that they represent, but also the cultural continuity they represent. So it's rare that the struggle of a small business makes it to the spotlight like we are in today, right? If it weren't, usually, as I said, they just quietly disappear, but that's why, and nobody really notices, but that's why this case is so important, right? Sankofa should be thought of as representing many other similarly situated businesses that didn't ask for help, didn't know how, didn't know how to mobilize hundreds of people to be in a room to write thousands of letters, or were too embarrassed by their situation, or whatever the case might have been, right? But either way, they struggled in solitude, and one day they went away. So, for example, I want you guys to pay attention to this. We at the Grill are in a similar boat. Our property taxes have increased, listen to this, over 400% in the past 10 years. I did the math, 463% since I've been around. Okay? We can't pass it on to our customers. We can charge 10 or 15% or 20% more for a cup of coffee, but we can't charge them 4 times as much, So what happens is that you know, and especially in a case like the Grill and Sankofa, because we represent, our customers are diverse, right? We have people that come in and say, well, if we go up on the beans, and beans were $3.86 before the tax, and now they're $4.29, people might say, well, it was always $3.86. And I bought $3.86, you know? And so, you know, while we're talking about property tax today, I want you to understand that this is one of the myriad forces working against the survival of a place like Sankofa. A treasured institution like Sankofa, you know, she could probably run down a list of other things, but the issue today is property tax. And, you know, I'm not speaking abstractly when I talk about Sankofa, but, you know, I'm speaking personally because Shariki Yana and Hailey took me under their wing, you know, 20 years ago when I was fresh out of college and here in DC, and have helped guide my growth ever since. And likewise, as Professor Carr pointed out, they played that role for numerous people. You know, I didn't go to Howard, but numerous people, whether or not they were Howard students or alumni. So if one really understands what this battle is about, and that it's about more than Sankofa, the question really is, what will DC look like? What will the future of DC look like?
Good question.
So the district has to decide if it places value on things like Sankofa. I think the people have already decided by the fact that it's always full when you go there, and there's hundreds of people here today and people outside. So now I think the government has to decide whether or not it places a similar value on Sankofa. Right? So in talking about this proposed bill, somebody asked me, well, is there precedent for something like that? And I would say, yes, there is precedent, because we just witnessed where every city in the country joined by the district was in a competition to offer millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in tax benefits, incentives, and other support to a company, to lure a company whose founder is the richest man in the world, literally. So is it because Sankofa is not a billion-dollar enterprise that it doesn't warrant like-kind treatment? And obviously, I'm not speaking in terms of dollar amount, I'm speaking in terms of principle. You know, that there should be, I think fairness would dictate, there should be some type of proportional response indicating that, yes, we want them here in DC. We want Sankofa to exist. So just to bring it full circle, to be fair to late Mayor Barry, it would have been really hard to see around that corner, right? You can Google pictures of the history after the riots to imagine that it would be what it is today, and that only 4 of the businesses there would live to see it. That would have required like thinking around some corners that would be almost impossible to imagine 40 years ago. But the point is today, you don't really need a crystal ball. You don't really need a crystal ball to see where the next phase of growth that is overtaking the city is going to lead us.
Mr. Hutchins, I'm gonna have to stop you. I wasn't on top of mine. And you're about 2 minutes over.
It's gonna be 15 seconds.
I'll give you 10.
Okay. So basically, if there's not a deliberate effort to retain the critical institutions like Sankofa that they want to exist. So I'm here to sound the alarm, and hopefully you all won't one day look back at your tenure in power with the same kind of regrets that Mayor Barry had.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hutchins. Mr. Coates.
Good afternoon.
Tallahassee
Yeah,
Coast.
good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie, Councilman Leader, and Maria. My name is Paul Coates, and I'm founder and owner of Black Classic Press, a book publishing and printing company. As a book printing company, we print books for everyone. As a publishing company, we specialize in publishing books for, by, and about people of African descent. We're celebrating our 41st year in business. That experience informs the comments I make this afternoon. I thank you for allowing me to comment in favor of the tax abatement legislation, Bill B-230075, introduced by Councilman Lee. My comments will highlight the vital role of Sankofa, books and video, as part of the national landscape of black bookstores devoted to servicing people of color. The most recent edition of the Washington magazine lists the best and worst of Washington: sandwiches, shops, cocktails, and local heroes. It's a long list. Notable to me was listing my best of Washington, Sankofa Books, and my local heroes, Sharikiyana and Holly Green, owners of Sankofa Books. I was disappointed but not totally surprised. They did not make the list. The Washingtonian, as we all know, primarily devotes its attention to a largely white reading audience, and my heroes and favorite shop devote themselves largely to African and African American community. They don't get a lot of attention for this. The only way to understand what they do is to see them as if they're on a mission, channeling their commitment to Black culture through books, videos, and the wide-ranging discussions and lectures they make available in the space called Sankofa Books. There they bring together authors and a receptive community to discuss issues and events chronicled in the books and videos themselves. Books and videos that are not generally available in mainstream bookstores. On any given day, Black authors from Europe, the Caribbean, Africa, or the U.S. can be found holding forth at Sankofa, sharing awareness of Black life from their very historic. No other place in the city, public or private, competes with the level of cultural and intellectual free programming presented by Sankofa. As much as Sankofa is a bookstore, it is also our community learning and innovation center. In this sense, Sankofa performs a role that Black bookstores have performed since the earliest days of Black freedom. It is important to note here that Sharikiyana and Holly have kept this tradition alive for the last 2 decades. This is an enviable accomplishment when compared to Black bookstores in other parts of the country. When Sankofa opened in 1998, there were about 300 plus Black bookstores across America. In 2019, 21 years later, there are approximately 110. 2/3 of the Black bookstores from 1999, 1998 have closed, leaving Black book deserts across America in major cities like New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Dallas. Of the survivors, most are pretty small outlets that depend on the sale of incidental items like art, CDs, and other things to supplement the books they sell. And those items provide the bulk of their revenue. Of the surviving stores, Sankofa remains as one of the few full-service bookstores that generates its main income from the Black books itself that otherwise are not available in our community. I knew personally many of the owners of the stores that closed. Like Sharikiyana and Holly, most of the owners opened their stores because they saw books as a way to improve conditions in the Black community. They knew the old adage, just got a few seconds of that. They knew the old adage, books change people and people change the world. But they faced hell trying to make those changes. They encountered all of the challenges businesses face and more: lack of capital, access to it, increasing rents, cost of books, and in some cases, the same obstacle we're discussing today, escalating taxes, as a reward for staying in a once depressed community. Almost all of the closed stores also experience the adverse impact of chain bookstores and the behemoth Amazon on their sales. Considering all these factors, it is easy to see why the number of Black bookstores has decreased significantly. What's more amazing and heroic is that despite all of these negative factors, Sankofa has survived. With your vote in favor of the current bill, Sankofa will be well positioned to serve the residents of DC and all of our communities in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Duffy and Councilmember Nadeau and staff. My name is Lydia Curtis, and I am testifying in support of Bill 230075. If passed, this bill will give Sankofa Video and Books the tax relief needed in order to keep their doors open, to provide the educational and cultural programs that are needed in the community. Sankofa cannot close. It is liberated space, as owner Haile Garuma calls it, a space where people with an African consciousness gather to learn, create, and fellowship in safety and acceptance. It is an international space where creative people from all around the world come to eat healthy organic food, get advice from Haile and Shurikiana, his partner, filmmaker, wife, and co-owner of the business, and buy books about Black history and culture. It is a safe space where divergent views can be expressed and debated, and where voices from oppressed and marginalized communities are heard. It is a space where our elders and children are cared for. I have seen people come in with no money and still be able to have a healthy meal with dignity. Sankofa is not only the communications hub and heart of the community. On a very personal level, Sankofa is my home away from home. My nonprofit organization, Siddiqui Educational Safari, benefits from the inexpensive space in their second floor conference area. We also host events there and tap into a strong network of activists and scholars there. I cannot tell you how many times I've been working on a project at Sankofa and have someone walk in that I can consult with if I'm having a problem, or get ideas from if I am planning. Sankofa is a place where, since 1998, all ages have something enriching to experience, often with each other. Open mics, spoken word and live music, happy nappy storytelling time, independent movies with filmmakers, critical reading workshops, script writing, directing, acting workshops, and of course, great affordable food. Sankofa is a think tank where minds and ideas are nurtured and people are encouraged to be the best that they can be. A place like Sankofa cannot close, but a $30,000 tax bill will snuff the life out of this valuable business. Open 7 days a week, it is a priceless haven. I buy all of my books there and have donated to them over the years because I care deeply about the well-being of this institution. As a DC homeowner, business owner, and taxpaying, I am telling you that it is critical that the council grant this tax abatement to Sankofa. The city needs to stem the tide of Black businesses closing in DC. Let me mention Black bookstores specifically. At one time, we had Pyramid Books, Agape Books, Yawa Books, Karibu Books, which had 2 stores in DC. Drum and Spear, Ujima Books, Sister Space and Books, and Children of the Sun. Now, we have Mahogany in Southeast and Sankofa. We have to change the policies in this city that choke out the small businesses and foster the displacement of poor and working class people. I strongly urge you to support this tax abatement bill for Sankofa Video and Books and create similar legislation and policies to save other small businesses in rapidly gentrifying areas. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your testimony, Mr. Curtis. Thank you. I really appreciate the testimony. I'm not sincerely sure my colleagues as well. I think, I make this point earlier, so I want to also be mindful of the folks who are going to testify, but we touched on Mr. Watson in the testimony. That's part of this facility that people come and tell institutions to do it. We got to make sure that we put things in place, in terms of policy point I was making earlier, and it's kind of before I heard your testimony, I mean, there's so many other businesses that struggle with the same challenges that perhaps don't have the resources or the wherewithal to come and ask for a tax abatement. And so we've got to think about, it's government. But obviously, I went to Howard University, I don't consider myself the smartest person in that room. I need help. We're working on trying to figure out solutions. To the extent you all know the businesses that need help, let us know. Because we want to be able to help. And to the extent you all have ideas and solutions to address some of these things, specifically your own challenges, Florida Avenue Green. And we don't want to see Florida Avenue Green. We don't want to see Sankofa doing businesses like yours close down. And so we want to be able to put policies in place, which is maybe in scripture, so we have to change the policies in the city that choke out small businesses across the displacement of poor and working class people. It's not that one. In fact, I ran to try to prevent and fight against that. On the other hand, we know that sometimes the wave of economics, the wave of prosperity can overcome places if people don't put the policies in place to prevent it, to mitigate the challenges that we're seeing. There's a lot of prosperity in the city right now. To be honest, thousands of people fall through the cracks despite the prosperity that we're seeing. So I want to respond. Share your microphone.
Okay. Kind of building on a point that you're making, and earlier Councilmember White, there was a conversation about ownership, right? The point I want to make is that if Sankofa didn't own their building, they'd be gone already. And the poor businesses that I named that survived, if they didn't own their building, they would be gone a long time too. So that might be the first step, but it's not the second step where it's not enough. Because there are, I don't want to speak for other people, but I know there are other people in the same boat. It's just not sustainable. So I think we have to, for a person, we focus on gentrification and we talk about people, but we never think so much about businesses. So for
In fact, that's specifically what we think about.
yeah, exactly. So maybe there's a homestead exemption for a person to change their property, where I think it's capped at a certain amount they can go to. Maybe there should be some type of thing for businesses where they can get around for a certain number of years, something like that.
We know about that. It's actually something that even Brian smiling since I was just some of the things that we are thinking about currently. And what we're trying to do as a committee is think about policies and potential new laws that have a broader, more sustainable impact. Again, I mentioned earlier,